Hello, today I'm taking a look at a Saint Emilion Grand Cru. The wine concerned is a Chateau Quinault L'Enclos. It's the 2014 vintage of that. Now, Quinault L'Enclos was originally just known as Chateau Quinault. However, because it lies in the town of Libourne, up close against the estuary there, it's completely enclosed these days by habitation. Hence it's acquired the sobriquet Quinault L'Enclos. And here we're talking about the northwest corner of the Saint Emilion appellation. In fact, go back to 1973, Chateau Quinault was actually at that stage part of the now defunct Saint Emilion appellation. However, hard work in the intervening period has led to recognition of the quality of the wines to the extent that in 2012 the estate was classified as a Saint Emilion Cru Classe. Now, in no small part, that hard work was down to somebody called Alain Reynaud, who in 1997 purchased the property at a stage when it was about to be developed, to be honest. It was about to be bulldozed and lost to the world. Reynaud had quite a specific individualistic approach, quite a controversial approach to viticulture. He believed the vine should struggle. He believed in taking incredibly low yields of fruit, and he invested in the property. He renovated the chateau, the cellars, he reorganized the vineyards, he reintroduced hand picking, brought in 100% new oak for barrel aging, and kept yields incredibly low. Reynaud was incredibly proud of the fact that the estate has some very old vines. There are plots here planted in 1936. There are other plots planted 20 years later in 1956 following the frosts in this area. And average vine age is something like about 45 years. So there's some good concentrated fruit being produced on this property by old vines. This was an estate that was quite at the forefront of the hedonistic wines that were being produced in Saint-Émilion in the 1980s and the 1990s. The estate was sold in 2008 to Albert Frère and Bernard Arnault, the owners of Cheval Blanc. And they placed the team at Cheval Blanc in charge of running Quinault L'Enclos. So Pierre Lurton and Pierre-Olivier Clouet now make these wines, and actually there's been a move to draw back from the hedonistic styles that had previously been made here. So they've reduced the amount of Merlot planted in the vineyards. I mean, it's now down to about 72%, with 14% each of Cabernet Sauvignon, which is mostly new planting, and Cabernet Franc. So there was more than 10% of Merlot that's been removed from these vineyards, along with some Malbec as well. And the new team have really rather reined in the use of new oak. Now, the vineyard here is 19 hectares. As I say, it's all in one block, which is quite unusual for a vineyard of this size in Saint Emilion. There are sand and gravel soils with some clay. And the terroir here is actually quite warm. It tends to be that even when they were going for quite extreme ripe styles, that picking here was relatively early. So actually picking is now going on even earlier. But actually 2014 is a landmark vintage for this estate in that this is the first vintage in which Cabernet Sauvignon was included. So alongside 69% of Merlot, 18% of Cabernet Sauvignon in the blend in this year, and 13% of Cabernet Franc. I would assume that the wine probably still underwent its malolactic conversion in barrel. I don't know for sure. But as far as oak usage was concerned, only 50% of the oak used was new, so that's a substantial reduction there. And the barrels being used, still French oak, but the barrels being used are 500-litre barrels, so more than double the size of the standard Bordeaux barrique. So reducing the amount of contact that the wine has with the oak surface. There's a much larger proportion of wine to the surface of the barrels in those. And the wine ages in barrel for 18 months. Now, the other thing I should say is, although at this stage in 2014, this wine is classified as a Saint Emilion Cru Classe, of course, Chateau Quinault L'Enclos was withdrawn from the classification system alongside Cheval Blanc in the controversial circumstances of 2022 when Cheval Blanc withdrew from the classification. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? Looking at the colour, that's quite a dark ruby red, almost a sort of a black ruby, but it's nowhere near as deep as I was expecting it to be. That's nowhere near opaque. That's probably a medium depth of colour there. As I swirl it, The wine has 13% alcohol. It is forming tears on the glass, but they're not particularly powerful or heavy tears. So let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? The aromas still seem a little closed, and there's certainly plenty of tertiary aroma going on there. I could talk about forest floor notes. There's notes of anise. It's not quite sort of rich enough and ripe enough for me to describe it as licorice, but there's certainly some sort of sweet spice there. There's high notes of cedar. It's a rich red fruit, but then there's a sort of an almost tobacco leaf over there. Note over it. I'm not meaning that it's in any way unripe. That's not the case, but there's quite a sort of a lifted, almost sort of rose petal perfume in there. It seems quite developed. So let's have a taste. There's a nice freshness. The wine's a mid-weight. It's got a very fine structure. There is some nice lifted red fruit, but then you have this developed forest floor, not quite developed to sort of truffles and mushrooms sort of note yet. And there are sort of hints of almost a sort of a red fruit, as in raspberry, but then also notes of tea as well, that sort of slightly macerated sort of note there, but with a sort of a lifted perfume. It's quite enticing, actually. The oak is beautifully integrated. I mean, clearly there's a cedary undertone here, but it's not particularly standing out. And I'm seeing it more at the back of the mouth, where there's a little bit of sort of slightly spicy grip. The sort of the cinnamon notes, almost peppery. The 13% alcohol is it's giving a little bit of weight to the bit, but actually it's leaving a little bit of space for some of that sort of slightly raspberry, slightly loganberry fruit to show at the end, alongside those cedary tannins and hints of anise. The wine appears to be at a stage where it's just about opening up to full maturity. I don't think it's quite there yet. I think come back to this in another year, 18 months, it will be showing a lot more sort of, its bouquet will be opening up more, and I think some of the sort of red fruit perfumes that are being hinted at will show a little more here. Yes, thank you very much for watching. When I had a look at our aggregated score for this vintage of this wine, our aggregation of the critics' rankings of this come down at a 90 out of 100. That seems quite a fair rating for me. I think anybody who prefers elegance over power might feel it's been a little hard done by in that score, but this is certainly no blockbuster, and I think the fine structure, the perfumes suggesting that they will open, all sort of make me think that this is a wine that you could happily keep for another 5 or 6 years, probably longer, and that's going to provide very enjoyable drinking in that time. So yes, thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have enjoyed it, do please press the like button, do tell your friends, do feel free to share the video with your friends if you think they'd be interested. Do leave your comments in the comments box below. We would value your feedback about the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else related to that. I'll leave a link to the Wine Searcher website in the notes, and you can follow that to find out about pricing, availability, and the other details that are there on the various tabs. I mean, the profile tab will give you some of the background to the winemaking. You can see critics' reviews, and you can see a price history as well. Do please consider subscribing to our channel. Not only would we appreciate your support, but that way you can set yourself an alert and be warned about the release of any new tasting videos that we're making. So yes, thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye now.